It started around 450,000 years ago, the breakaway civilization.
450,000 years ago.
That's when they arrived on this planet. They came here about 450,000 years ago. At the time that they arrived, Alalu, who made it through the hammered bracelet, which is the asteroid belt. At that time, the asteroid belt was still very chaotic because the asteroid belt is an exploded planet. An exploded planet that used to have the name of Tiamat. Before Earth even existed, you had Mercury, Venus, which was in the position we're in now, and then you had Tiamat. Earth wasn't here yet. Tiamat had 2 moons. It probably had more than that, but the 2 we know of is the moon we have now and Mars. Mars can be backtracked. Even modern mainstream astrophysicists agree that Mars was probably a moonlet that orbited a much larger planet based on the weird elliptical orbit that it has.
Really?
Yeah. So what happened was you have our moon and you have Mars, the habitable moon, orbiting Tiamat. Tiamat in the Enuma Elish, the 7 tablets of creation, literally gets impacted by another object that was orbiting another star. So our solar system had gravitationally attracted a rogue solar system, so to speak. And there was a collision that happened which made Tiamat explode. When Tiamat exploded, now here's something interesting before I go that far. In the text, it says that Tiamat's glory rivaled the sun. It was a water-bearing planet with land and life. Now, who wrote that? How did they know that this planet had land and life and that it rivaled the sun's glory? That when the sun shined on it, it beamed back because they had so much water and it was so massive. It was 6 times larger than Earth. Somebody had a view of this planet from somewhere in the solar system. But anyway, so it exploded. A huge chunk swung away with all that land and organic material and recoalesced as the Earth. The moon then was put into place to balance the wobble. Right. Mars grabbed its own crazy elliptical orbit around the sun. That's why we can only rendezvous with Mars when it's in, I think it's in perigee every 2 years.
Right.
Because of its weird distances that it it has with the orientation to Earth.
Right.
And so Earth has weird anomalies inside of it that go back hundreds of millions of years. And people are like, how did this hammer, this 200 million year old hammer, because they can tell by the depth in these mines, how did this pottery get down here, 300 million year old piece of pottery? It's not from Earth. It's when Earth was part of Tiamat. You're looking at a relic from a whole other civilization when we were part of another planet. Nobody's talking about this. That's the next thing that I'm going to be talking about in my next book. We're talking about Earth.
They found artifacts that...
Oh, yeah. We've got artifacts that date back 300, 400, 500 million years.
Like which artifacts specifically?
There's vases, there's hammers, or things that look like hammers, or tools that have been discovered deep in these mine shafts. And you can tell the years by the depth of the mine. In
your book, you mentioned that some of these Ajiji were working for like 3,600 years to terraform the Earth or something like that. So, so getting back to, we kind of got a little bit off track, but we were talking about the origin of the Anunnaki was 4,500 years ago.
450,000.
I'm sorry. 450,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And they came from somewhere else, right? That's the meaning. Anunnaki means not from Earth, right?
Right.
So they came after there was a bigger planet that was 6 times the size of Earth. It somehow smashed into something and created the Earth.
Right.
So after that, why did they come here, and how did the tablets say exactly why they came here?
If you notice in our book, The Epic of Humanity, there's the most tablets ever referenced in any one book in history, first of all. This book has more references to more tablets and excerpts from those tablets. And the reason why, we're painting a picture that all these places from around the world and all these tablets and scriptures and papyruses and cylinder scrolls are all connected to one race of people that came from the Pleiadian star system. And they hail from the Pleiades. In my new TV series called Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed, which is coming out very soon in Regal Cinemas, and then it'll be on Forbidden TV, you'll find out that there was a galactic war in that sector of the galaxy. And this war was so crazy, they were using something called a Brahmahanda weapon, which can destroy any man on 3 worlds. We're talking about a real Death Star that existed in ancient times. This weapon, once it was released, you couldn't withdraw it. You couldn't bring it back. There was no way to cancel it. And you can operate it from something called a Tablet of Destiny. And whoever had their hands on these tablets of destiny had control of the galaxy, and they were stolen a couple of times. So power had been jumping back and forth. Imagine if we're here on this Earth, and somebody blows up Saturn. We want to get off Earth because big chunks are coming our way. So there were something called space refugees. My personal opinion. This is not in any text. This is my opinion now. These people fled. This is how we got the Orion, Aldebaran, Zeta Reticulus, the Dog Star. All these other places began to get inhabited. Earth was another targeted location as a breakaway civilization. Some of these beings, according to the Enuma Elish, landed on a planet orbiting a brown dwarf called Nibiru. And some people say, oh, Nibiru was never in any ancient text. Yeah, look at the oldest version of the Enuma Elish. It says Nibiru and it says Anunnaki. The oldest version. Much later, in a newer version, which a few thousand years later, another copy was made by Amun-Ra. He changed Nibiru's name to Marduk because he wanted to be the destroyer. But anyway, that's another story. But the point is, these people decided, look, we're looking for breakaway civilizations. Us on Earth right now, human beings, if we just think that we're going to stay here on this planet forever, we're fooling ourselves. We need to also look for breakaway civilization. We got to create a breakaway civilization for ourselves. Our sun is already middle age. It's going to die in 5 billion years, which seems like a long time, but that's a blink of an eye on geological timescales. Right. Earth is going to get swallowed up as it turns into a red giant because we don't have a massive sun that can create our sun will expand into a red giant. We don't have enough mass for it to turn into a supernova. So it'll expand to a red giant, then it'll shrink down and collapse into a white dwarf. But it's going to incinerate Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Gone. Incinerated, right?
Right.
So we need to start thinking if we want the humanity to progress. Not only that, we've only been here on this planet, as a human being and Homo sapiens for 200,000 years at this level. A blink of an eye, less than a blink of an eye. In any geological time, at any time, any geological disaster can happen here, and that could collapse our entire civilization. Even if just one solar flare can turn us off and we'll be done. So we have to find a way to get off planet, which is why this is big push for Mars. It's about creating a breakaway civilization, learning how to do it right, making mistakes along the way and learning from those, and then branching out even further into space. That's the plan. And so these beings came here because they're like, look, we got to find a breakaway civilization. They were scanning Earth, and they discovered from the scattered light that, like the same way we scan for elements, they discovered there was gold and other resources on the planet coming just from looking at the light of the planet. Same way we do now in astrophysics. So they said, this is a great place. So one guy risked his life to get through the hammered bracelet and made it through. Then he radioed back to Nibiru and said, hey, I found everything we need right here. And then they started sending people down a little bit at a time, and they started building. And when they got here, Enlil, on a crystal tablet he showed to his sister, it says, Ninmah, he showed her the building construction technique that's going to be on this planet, he said, for all time. He already had it laid out, how he was going to build the cities, how he was going to build the plumbing, everything, the way the city grid was going to be laid out. It was all on this crystal tablet. Now, what kind of tablet is a crystal tablet?
Right.
Sounds like an iPad or something.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Who sits around writing sci-fi stories 6,000 years ago? So somebody wrote this because they were told to, and I believe that what they wrote was exactly what possibly happened. I think we're getting as close to the truth as we can possibly get. Now, when they began doing all this building and all this work, we were already here. We meaning our cousins, human beings' cousins, not Homo sapiens sapien, but the prior version of us was already here. Now, this prior version of us, in my opinion, was probably more advanced spiritually. I think that we had bigger bones, bigger skulls, bigger brains. I think our skulls have been found all over. I think they've been misunderstood in some cases, maybe even for aliens in some cases, but that they had probably bigger pineal glands, probably could communicate silently, not technologically more advanced, but just more in tune with nature. A lot of abilities that we should have, like understanding how to feel the magnetic field and sense the magnetic field and navigate through that magnetic field like animals, we've lost that ability, but we know in a laboratory setting, we still have it because the crystals in our brain orient to the magnet.
Yeah.
So we still have it. We're not in touch with it anymore. But what happened was
That's funny. I have a friend who moved to the Amazon, and he said as soon as he moved to the Amazon and got disconnected from civilization and from technology, he said all these crazy instincts just came back into him.
Yes, I believe that because he needed time to be away from all of that,
right,
and just let your body recoalesce into what it truly is. This is the most powerful, machine that probably exists in this sector of the universe, and so. What they said was, okay, well, these people are here, but we're not going to mess with them. We're just going to continue to build what we're doing. And the Ijiji built and built and worked for about 200,000 years.
And we were already here?
We were already here in small pockets around the planet.
Okay.
And just indigenous peoples, just living our lives as, cave people and things like that. Nothing advanced. And then they probably saw us just as animals, you know. And then the Ijiji got pissed off, as you know, in the Antra Hasis and also in the Enuma Elish. 2 different stories, 2 different time periods, same story.
Now, okay, so can you explain exactly what the Ijiji were supposed to be? Were they part of the Anunnaki? Did they come here with the Anunnaki?
They came with the Anunnaki.
Okay.
They were the workers. They were, in other words, if I'm going to go out and buy a huge plot of land and say I'm going to build a city here, I'll probably call somebody like Chris Dunn and say, hey, man, I need an engineer, right? This guy, but an engineer is going to say, well, I need brick masons and stone masons. And they're stone masons, I need electricians. So these were the people that knew how to do the grunt work. They knew how to build the structures based on the instructions or the blueprints. Right. So these are the people. They were builders. And they were Anunnaki. Now, Anunnaki doesn't mean they're all one particular race of people. It means they were people who came from heaven to earth. Anybody from space that comes to earth is an Anunnaki. The civilization they built is the Atlantean. But even in the tablets, it talks about some of these people coming from different planets or stars, which means that they probably most likely were a mixed race of people. And I have evidence to prove this, and I'll tell you in a minute. So they got pissed off. They decided, look, we're working too hard. You guys are treating us almost like slaves now. We want to get a break. We want some relief from this work. And even that, not only that, we want women. They were pissed off that they didn't have any women.
Really?
So this is where the sons of God fell from heaven. They came from Mars down to earth in Genesis, and they took women with them back. But in the Sumerian tablet, you get the full story where they go to Adam's calendar in South Africa. They encircle the camp of the god, which is Anu, the head of the Anunnaki at that time, and they get ready to do war. And Enki and Lil and Anu come outside. They get their guards out there. Everything is tense, and they say, "Look, man, we're tired of doing this labor, and we need a break." That's Adam's calendar there in Africa, where one of the oldest gold mines was discovered, and it dates back to 200,000 years. Isn't that interesting?
Really?
Yes. Pretty crazy stuff. But what's interesting is that these people, these Anunnaki people, they said, okay, well, we're going to go to war then, because there's nothing we can do. You guys got to keep working. And then Enki says, wait a minute, I have an idea. There's an existing being on this planet, existing. We can add our essence to it. So this is where they took one of the Ijiji, took some blood from an Ijiji, and it's not really quite clear how they did it or what they did, but in some way, it seems as if they combined that with the genetics of one of these hominids, our cousins, and they made a clone, mixed Ijiji, mixed hominid, somebody they can control. In other words, they can communicate with, they can teach to a certain level, they can get them to do the workload, they can instruct them, and they would listen. And so they were doing this genetic modifying, and they
it sounded like they sacrificed one of the gods.
Right. They call it a sacrifice. I don't know if they really would have killed it outright. It could be a term that's used to specify draining the blood out.
Right. Okay.
I would be surprised if they really actually killed, because when you get to that level of technology and advancement, the fact that you would kill somebody to make somebody else live, it seems a little weird. It seems more like a huge blood transfusion or some type of an organ donate. It was something. I don't know if the person really died, because it never really says if they died or not. The word sacrifice could be a word used when you don't know what word could exist in that spot.
Right.
It's potential. Now, that's potential. It could be a sacrifice for real. I'm not sure. But my hypothesis leads me to believe probably a little different, because they're just too advanced. So they made this clone version of hominid / Ijiji, got it to work, but so they started making more in these Hathor birthing houses, which the Hathor birthing houses, like at the Temple of Dendera, the Temple of Isis, and all these other places, are there. They're still there. The structures are still there. I take people to see them every year. Now, what's interesting is these people, they couldn't produce babies on their own. If you take a lion and a tiger and you mate them, you're gonna have a lion, right? But the lion can't make any babies. No matter how much time you try to mate it, it won't be able to have any babies. It can't. If it's a male, it won't be able to get anybody pregnant, and if it's a female, it won't be able to get pregnant.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's genetics. The genetics work to a certain point, and then they fall apart. Just like If you take a horse and a donkey, you get a mule, but mules can't reproduce.
For real?
Yeah.
Did you know this, Steve?
No, I didn't know that at all. I thought if you can make a thing, then they can make other
Yeah,
things.
I thought that's how like breeding shit, like that's how they made the golden retriever, by like breeding different dogs together. And
yeah, certain combination of chromosomes don't reproduce. So you have the horse and a donkey will make you a mule.
Okay.
But a mule can't make another mule. It's pretty interesting stuff. You know, and so same thing I think with these clones. And so they started getting frustrated because they weren't making enough clones to get the amount of workload done. They wanted them to reproduce on their own. And so that's when Isis says, you know, I have an idea. I'm going to take the baby to term. I'm going to give birth to the Adamu. So she takes an egg out of one of the existing hominids. She does something with the DNA and the genetics inside the egg, what we call today making a zygote. She puts it in her room. That's artificial insemination. And then she takes it to term 10 months. And there's a cylinder scroll with her holding up the baby saying, my hands have made it, the Adamu. That means first man. So now we have the first genetically modified, perfected version of Homo sapiens sapien. They tried to mate him with these other clones. Didn't work again. They said, damn it. So they then took some DNA from him, made another, a female, and then mated them together, and it worked. I said, we got it. So then they started making Adams and Eves in these birthing houses. Adams and Eve. Adam and Eve weren't the only two people on Earth. They were, when they got here, there were already probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people already here. Okay? And then what happens is, if you take two people and you think you're going to get 8 billion out of two, it doesn't work. What happens if you start having with your sister?
Right.
And then she gives birth, and then those babies have to each other. You're going to have genetic mutations, and by the third generation, they won't even be able to, they'll be dead, they'll be stillbirths.
Right.
Not enough genetic diversity. So they created Eden, E-D-I-N, and Enki, he was known as Satan, the Lord of Eden in the text. And he would watch over this Eden. He had guards with weapons to guard why would you have to guard this place with weapons? And he had people in there, and he was having mating time. They have specific times that they can mate and couldn't mate. And it was like breeding people. And they were working on perfecting it. And when Enki came and told Adam and Eve who they were and how powerful they were and that they were the same level as them, that's when they realized that they weren't dumb. That was the apple. The apple was knowledge. And then Enlil comes back and gets pissed off because he discovered what happens. And he said, then he starts calling his brother the devil. You don't listen to him, he's evil. But that was to distract the people, to keep him in charge of the people. In the myth of Adapa, if you read that ancient tablet, the myth of Adapa, which is Adam, you discover that he's been told that the way that we were genetically modified by Enki, he added a little extra into us, that even us, we human beings, Homo sapiens sapien, have the capability of superseding and excelling far beyond the Anunnaki when we reach our full potential. And it was programmed into us. He said also, the knowledge and wisdom is already programmed into our body, into the DNA, that at a future time we'd be able to tap into it. That's in the myth of Adapa. Whoa. Yeah, powerful stuff. And when Adam discovered all of this, he tried to commit suicide. He was kicked out of the garden, as you know. He tried to drown himself in the waters. And the guards came and pulled him out of the water, wouldn't let him kill himself. And then, as you know, they had Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel. And then Cain tells God, well, God is Enlil, Yahweh. Who's he talking to? He's talking to Enlil, who's known as Yahweh in the Bible. He says, you're going to get out of here, and for what you did. And Cain says, well, the people out there are going to kill me. That's what it says in the Bible. Well, what people? There shouldn't be anybody out there.
Right.
Oh, there's people out there. He goes, don't worry, I'm going to put a mark on you. And that way they'll know your minds and they'll never touch you. And you'll find your wife when you get out there, which is exactly what happened. And he started the Canaanites. So people were here already. Adam and Eve were not the first two people on Earth. Two people didn't produce 8 billion people. That's a farce. Even in mainstream, science, when they talk about this one, this one hominid that they discovered in Africa, everybody came out of this one lady. Come on, it's ridiculous. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Genetics doesn't work that way. We all know that. Chromosomes don't work that way. We all know that. And what's interesting is you have a civilization being built that started off by genetic mutating an existing hominid species on Earth to create a worker race. A worker race that was enslaved but didn't believe they were enslaved. They did two things. They installed a worship gene in the human genome, and scientists have now found this worship gene. When this gene is turned off, the person has no need or want to worship outside of itself or him or herself. When it's turned back on, the person has a feel or need to worship something on the outside. When it's off, we go inside. So this worship gene was put in. They were masquerading as gods. They needed to put that in there to keep us loyal to them. So we would do the work thinking it would be giving praises to the gods. And then the second thing is, as you look at the Emerald Tablets where it's talked about everybody was spread out around the planet, and people were told to go around the planet and rule over different areas, I believe that the reason what makes you a Caucasian, makes me a black person, what makes an Asian person yellow, what makes an indigenous American person red, is a genetic marker. That's the marker. In genetics, I started digging into this. I said, why is this color difference? In other words, I shouldn't be this skin tone because my ancestors were digging in the working in the fields of Africa or walking in the sands of the desert. It's ridiculous.
That's the theory, right?
That's the theory.
It's because being out in the sun all day produces more melanin to protect you from
foolishness.
Right.
What I discovered real science in real books in colleges. You go look it up. It says that there's a 2% variance in genes between races of people. And we're all the human race, but there's a 2% difference. Now, that 2% difference is so big on the genetic scale that it would take multi-millions of years to happen naturally through natural evolution. But it happened in 200,000 years. So what the scientists are saying is it happened artificially. They say they don't know how it happened artificially, but this is an artificial mutation. But when you look at the Sumerian tablets and you discover the Tower of Babel incident, it really explains what happened. When Enlil, who's known as Yahweh, comes back and sees humans building a tower into the heavens in one of these cities, duplicating what the Anunnaki had built, he gets pissed off because he realizes, oh man, Enki got me. These people are too smart. And he says, I got to destroy this. So he destroys the tower. In the Bible, he destroys the tower in the Sumerian tablets. Mm-hmm. And he says, my seed shall not abide in man forever. His years shall be 120. That's the first thing he did. He cut our years down to 120 years. And what's the maximum lifespan of a human being in the most pristine condition, according to Harvard University professors? 120 years. Then the next thing he did was he separated humans and put them in different places around the planet, just like the tablets say. And then he confused the languages so that we couldn't communicate and collaborate anymore, which is why there's all these different crazy languages. And then on top of that, he put a brand. There's a brand. Whoever ruled over an area, brand your people. We know that those are your people. Brand your people. We know those are your people. So there's this separation, this divide and conquer tactic that's a super ancient divide and conquer tactic that happened long, long time ago to separate and divide humanity into these sects and these different compartments.
So for what reason, though?
To keep us from collaborating, to keep us from living longer, number one, keep us from collaborating with each other. And look how it's worked. Look how these invisible lines we have on this planet till this very day are still here. Yeah. If I go to Mexico, I'm an alien. If they come to America, they're an alien.
Yeah, we're still blowing each other up, blowing each other up because of fucking religious ideologies.
It's crazy. So I walk across this invisible line, I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be shot. Yeah. Look what's going on in Israel and Palestine. So it's the same. They did it. What they did, it's still working till this very day. That's how powerful it was. And we have fallen victim and prey to genetic modification and dogma that has really held mankind back from achieving its maximum potential in a much shorter period of time. We're still going in that direction, but we could have been so much further along if it wasn't for the dogma and the genetic modification.
Chris Dunn's new book called The Tesla Connection about the Giza power plant, he basically updated his whole theory on the pyramids.
It just got delivered because I had it on pre-order, and then when I was out of the country all this time, it came to my house. I finally opened up all that piles of mail and saw his book there.
Yeah. So he reworked his whole original theory on the Giza power plant. Nice. And he made, now in a nutshell, his theory is that it was a solid state electron harvester that harvested vibrations deep within igneous rock, deep within the earth, like with earthquakes. Like with near fault lines, there's this phenomena where people will see like balls of like plasma light come up into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And he had a NASA scientist talk about this. This guy actually did a TED Talk where he talked all about how these lights that would come up through fault lines, they would come up days or weeks before earthquakes, and they were indicators of how to avoid destruction and death with earthquakes. Like so if you start to see these balls of light coming up at night near fault lines, to get the hell out because there's going to be an earthquake. And they did studies and they found out, in fact, they found out there were earthquakes following these balls of light that were coming up into the atmosphere. And it connects with his whole theory that these pyramids, I think it's 14 square acres that the Great Pyramid covers. There was that subterranean chamber under the. I mean, you've been there many times. I've never been there.
I've been in the subterranean chamber.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they opened it for me. It went down. Yeah.
So his theory is that there was a hydraulic hammer or something in there that would go off and create seismic vibrations within the earth, and that would somehow resonate up through the grand gallery into the king's chamber. And then there was also around the pyramids, apparently there's these cavities in the ground where they would pour some sort of chemical, and the shafts that go out of the pyramid, those would fill up with liquid hydrogen, and they were sort of like microwave emitters.
I believe that. I talk about that in a lot of my lectures over the last maybe 8 years.
Really?
Yes. I talk about the fact that those shafts were there because the way the Queen's Chamber is set up, you can see that it's set up for, at least my perception of it is that it's set up to extract hydrogen from the water that would run up in there from the aquifer that used to be underneath the pyramid. And the shafts, they're pointed and aligned perfectly with star systems. What do we use right now in astrophysics to try to communicate with ET? We use the frequency of hydrogen to send our messages.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So I believe that we were sending messages to Aldebaran, to Orion, and all these other Sirius that we're aligned with on those particular alignments with the Great Pyramid. We know these alignments are real because it's even in mainstream science, to send communications. This is a report on Earth. This is where we are right now. This is what's going on. This is how developed we've done, blah, 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 blah. Kind of a report as to what's going on, a communication back home to these different star systems. And so that's what I believe those shafts were for that. Plus also the fact that the pyramid itself was generating power. I think the Great Pyramid is a multifunctional stone computer and power generator. It had multi-functions, not just one or two, but probably 10 or 15 functions.
Yeah, and he apparently there was like a big explosion that happened, like a hydrogen explosion that happened within the king's chamber that sort of like blew it all apart.
Yeah.
When apparently that was like during the Younger Dryas, when all those cosmic impacts came through. There was too much energy.
There's a picture of me standing right next to the granite box on the inside, and the corner, I'm pointing to it because it's broken off. I'll send you this photo.
Right.
You can look across the room, though, and you can see where it hit the granite wall and made the exact same indentation from the corner piece and destroyed the granite wall in the corner. So it flew about 20 feet across the room and smashed and broke solid granite in the same exact corner piece angle. I was told by one of the guides a couple years ago that, get as much as you can coming in here because they say that they may one day shut off access to the king's chamber. I said, why would they do that? He said, well, they're afraid that, the pyramid's earthquake or something could make it unstable. I'm like, this thing has been here for thousands of years. It's not going to become unstable. That's foolishness. What's happening is they've discovered something technological about it, and they want to control it. So
NASA owns the rights to the interior of the Great Pyramid.
Yes.
That's spooky, man.
They also own the rights to a section of the Grand Canyon. So I took a helicopter down into the Grand Canyon. They said we can't walk to this area. That area I heard had some old carvings or something would be over in this area. So I started trying to walk that way. And this guy pops out of nowhere with all black on, black hat, black military outfit with no logos, and an AR-15 and tells me, halt, you can't go any further. I'm like, well, why? I said, what's going on? Oh, didn't they tell you couldn't come over here? I said, well, they did, but I'm thinking, I just want to see, what's over here.
Right.
And he says, you can't come. I said, well, why? What? I said, can you just tell me, sir, why can't I come over here? He says, NASA owns the rights to this section. You can't come over here.
At the Grand Canyon.
At the Grand Canyon.
Do you have any theories of why that is?
This got to be technological. Start something with space. And then also, where else? Chaco Canyon. Same situation. They actually own the rights to those round former things that look like they might have been domes or whatever. That now there's no dome, but you can see those round circles.
Where are those at?
Chaco Canyon. That's in South America. And so it's like, so wait a minute, what's going on here? How in the world are what are they doing? As soon as India sent that satellite to Mars and took a color image of Mars, the real color with the oceans and the water and everything of Mars, the director of NASA flew straight to India, and the next thing you know, about a month later, they're signing a deal. There's a whole press release about it, and they now put them under their umbrella. And the next thing you know, that image, they put something called false color on it, turned the whole thing red. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, the newest image of Mars just got released. I have an image that I took with my Celestron telescope, and a new one just came out. This new image of Mars.
How long ago?
Just the other day.
Really?
They finally let somebody see what Mars really looks like. That's it right there. So, and I'm going to send you the one I took years ago with my Celestron 130 telescope.
Earth.com. Steve, if you can find it, find out. It's called Planet Mars Captured in True Color for the First Time Ever. It's on Earth.com. Wow. Yeah. What is all the blue supposed to be?
Water.
Really?
Guess what they just said about Mars recently? They said that the soil on Mars is better for growing crops than the soil on Earth.
Yeah, look at this, man.
How do they know that?